My name's Tom Kirkham. I'm founder and CEO of IronTech Security, which is a division of Kirkham Inc. It is our security division, and been around for a few years. Kirkham's been around for about 20 years, and been doing this a long time. Been in the IT world for a very, very long time. Besides the 20 years, it's more like 30 something. I'm not really sure. Anyway, today's topic is security is not your IT guy's responsibility. And hopefully at the end of this, you'll have a better understanding of both what we do, what your IT guy or gal or consultant, even your own staff people, what they do and what their responsibilities are. So one of the things I like to talk about is the fact that IT is a huge business. You know, these are just 4 of the specialties inside of IT. Programmers, network administrators, database administrators, web designers. There's slews of others. I mean, just dozens and dozens, if not more, specialties inside of IT. And it's very hard for a database administrator to do the work or to be an expert at network administration, or any one of those 4 to be an expert in the other. So, for example, let's just take a look at programming. Now, a lot of people think that if you're a programmer, you know everything. And that's what you really know, is you know how to create an application or a website using a particular language or 2 or 3 or maybe 4. These days, it's not uncommon for people to be proficient in 5 or 10 different languages, and they can quickly learn just about any language, especially if it's object-oriented, because they have the fundamentals down. But some of these languages they spend their entire life becoming experts at it. So, you know, when you're looking at Visual C or assembler or some of the lower level languages, they got a lot of ins and outs, and you may spend 10 years becoming an expert at it, or you only work in that one language your entire career. It's not as common as it used to be, but there are over 9,000 programming languages out there, and this is just the A list, the ones that we begin with the letter A off of the Wikipedia site. And you'll see assembler there, or assembly language. That is about the lowest level language you can get. That is, I got a lot of respect for people that can program an assembler. That's the hardest way in the world to do software programming. But you also see AppleScript, which is a scripting language. I'm not familiar with any of the others as a cursory glance, but there's another ActionScript, another scripting language. But anyway, that's just the A's, right? So with over 9,000 languages, no one's going to be an expert at all of them. It'd be impossible to do that, but you can be proficient. And when we get into the web designers or the web programmers, you'll see what I mean by that a little bit better. But when it comes to network administration, you don't want to go to a programmer, right? That you want people that have specialized skills, like they understand what DNS is and what it does and how it affects your business or your utility. They know the difference, just these little things like IPv6 and IPv4. They know what the difference is between those 2 internet protocols. It's how the whole thing, how this whole internet and your network works is with IPv4 and IPv6. And you have to understand how that works. Network admins typically do permissions, which is security related. You know, they perhaps will set, you know, administrative controls around the password complexity or password expiration, which is actually a little quick test to see how up to date their security skills are. If your IT department or your IT guy or gal is saying, oh, well, we've got to do password expiration in 30 days. You know, you got to get a new password every 30 days. That's no longer true. And we kind of led the way in that. We began questioning that very policy a couple of years ago. And now we're seeing that the policy of using more complex passwords and less frequent changes actually increases the security on a network. So just a little interesting aside there. It's a little quick test to see where they are on it. Network admins have to understand what DHCP is, or reserved addresses, around IPv4 or IPv6. Misspelled directory, but they've got to be pretty proficient on how to manage Active Directory and group policies and things like that. Another thing they have to do is patch management. Not only do they have to make sure that software gets updated for security patches, but they also got to make sure the software gets updated properly for new features and functions and bug fixes, because their number one job is to make sure your IT network just works and everyone is as proficient and efficient as possible. Maximum productivity, minimal downtime. That is what a network admin's job is. That's his primary responsibility. Okay? We're going to come back to that in a later slide. So let's look at database administrators. There's hundreds of databases, if not more, out there in the world. Oracle, DB2, NoSQL, MySQL, SQL Server, Fox Pro. Paradox are some older ones. DB4, I don't even know what the last one is. DB2, IBM's database. Each of those also have their own programming language, but it's really a querying language, right? So I want to do a query to find a very specific data set inside this database. So database admins are generally good, or at least proficient in developing queries on the fly. Now, there's also others like system analysts and others that are actually more proficient at building queries. A database administrator has to get into the theory of the design and maximizing the database response speed, because huge databases take a long time to go through records and index records and all of those things. So a good database admin is going to, his number one objective is to make that database run, never go down, but also to be the most efficient way to get business intelligence out for the company or the organization. So they've got a very specific skill set as well. Let's take a look at web designers or web programmers as well. They're two different things, but we're going to lump them together just for the sake of the discussion. They've got to have some graphics expertise, or at least be proficient in things like Photoshop or any vector package like Pixel Maker, I think is what I use. They also have to have a proficiency in databases, because chances are the database of the website, if it's WordPress, it's going to be running on, most likely running on MySQL. It's a database program. So all of the things you do inside your website for setting it up and adding users, members, doing blog posts, adding pages, all of that stuff is stored in a database. And a good web person has proficiency in databases and making sure those are efficient and don't go down, although that falls more on database administrators and network administrators. They also have to have programming language. Now, it's not like Assembler or Visual C, but they do need to know HTML and JavaScript and a whole host of other things in order to both present the visual of the website, but also to sometimes they may have to dabble into doing a query on a database. Now, this is for bonus points, and I don't know, we don't have any really bonus points to award, But if anyone knows where or who invented the World Wide Web, you get a gold star, okay? So just throw it up in the chat box. That's actually, Al Gore actually invented the internet. And actually, a funny story with that, he actually did contribute to the invention of the internet, okay, believe it or not, and I'll tell you the story sometime. So there is truth to that, but it's not the World Wide Web. Okay, does anybody else know? Any other guesses? I'll give you a hint. It was not in the United States, nor was it an American. Anybody? Bueller? Okay, it was Sir Tim, well, he wasn't a sir then, but it's Tim Berners-Lee. He invented the World Wide Web at CERN, the super collider on the French-Switzerland border. And he invented it to share data to other theoretical physicists, particle physicists, and all of this in a published format. So he invented HTML, the hypertext markup language. The very first website was hosted on a Next computer that Steve Jobs founded after he was booted out of Apple. He created Next, N-E-X-T, and that was the first server. That was the hardware for the first server. I've seen it. Been to CERN. I've seen the very first web server, and pretty cool. Pretty cool. The World Wide Web is different than the internet. The internet was around quite a while, several years before the World Wide Web, by the way. All right, so next time you'll have to work on your bonus points. All right, we are going to talk now about security specialist. These are just some of the skill sets or some of the roles that security specialists in our IronTech world. These are the people that we work with almost on a daily basis. Some of them we do. Some of these things we're experts at. Our role, as we've discussed in previous webinars, we've discussed what our role is. Our role is not to necessarily monitor a security operations center, but we do dabble in it, but we have SOC analysts that do it for us. These are people that are certified and specialize in doing nothing but putting human eyes and human brains on detecting threats and killing threats and remediating threats out there in the world for companies like us. And then we in turn take all of those things and manage all of those things with our so-called command center, coordinating responses and doing assessments and things like that. That's our role, right? Now, within security companies, they typically have a red and blue team, and they're specialists you could be a specialist on the red side, specialist on the blue side. Red is offense, blue is defense. Red tries to hack stuff, the blue guys try to defend against it. They're trying to defend and protect the core. Remember the core of the onion that we've talked about, what you're trying to protect. Blue team specializes in deploying layers and doing real-time blocks and defensive strategies to put more and more layers against a real-life threat. There's risk analyst. That risk analysis is a very important part of security. It might even be the most important part. You got to have experts in business continuity. This requires some business skills. It requires risk analysis. It requires leadership, C-level type stuff to really understand business continuity issues and how there's a number for that. You to be the maximum in continuity is practically requires a budget of the likes of Amazon and Google, Microsoft, things like that. There's people that specialize in nothing but backups. There's numerous ways to do backups, numerous ways to restore, and those are directly related more often than not to business continuity. But perhaps the most important thing when you're talking about security specialists, all security specialists practice administrative control creation implementation, policing of the administrative controls, and we talked about those in some other deeper dives. But basically, administrative controls is what wraps up all of the physical controls and the technical controls. Those will not work without administrative controls. As an example, you put a lock on your front door of your office, and let's say there's a policy. This is an administrative control. The policy says you don't unlock the door before 8 a.m. and you don't lock the door before 5 p.m. Well, if you just had the lock, it's not going to do it by itself. You've got to have administrative control in order to make it work. Same thing with the technical controls for security defense. And if you just deploy an EDR, like an endpoint detect and response package, it still has to operate within the parameters of administrative controls that have been developed based on risk, continuity, and all of these other things, defense, security posture, all of that. And the biggest administrative control, perhaps, is security awareness training. So security in and of it security is a big world, right? There's locksmiths. There's people that specialize in video surveillance, facial recognition, these types of things. Notice that those aren't necessarily IT specialties. If you noticed, I did not include that in that short list of IT specialties. And the reason for that is information security is not IT. It starts with security. It's a subset of security itself. It's not a subset of information or a IT world. It's not a subset of database administration and network administration and programming. It requires a different mindset to think of these things from a security standpoint. Okay, so much of cybersecurity protection is through security awareness training. A security specialist is going to think about the con jobs or the scams or the social engineering, like Twitter experienced last week, where their own software engineers were socially engineered. They were scammed into granting access to their 50 or so real important accounts, or 50 important accounts. So security requires a lot of skill sets outside of the IT world. So in the world, it's generally considered cybersecurity starts in the security industry with a great knowledge of IT and the parts of IT that needs to be done, implementing different tools and things like that. But we also have to keep the human factor in mind, both from the security threat standpoint and also the whole buy-in. A security specialist their job is to make that business as secure as possible. Network administrator is there to make everything run as efficiently as possible. Those are conflicts of interest. 100% security, you wouldn't have computers in your business. That's not practical. And maximum efficiency on the network administrator side would have 0 passwords. You just got access to everything whenever you need it, as fast as possible. You got to keep the business going. You got to make the network stay up. A security guy is going to want to close the network down if there's a attempted intrusion. So so it's a different mindset, and there's a genuine conflict of interest between those two types of jobs. And that's why your security should not be your IT person's responsibility. That should be a security organization or a security expert's responsibility to make sure you have the human stuff, the physical stuff, the technical stuff, and the administrative stuff in place. So if you're a large company, to illustrate this point, a CISO is a Chief Information Security Officer. Now, that C-level position should report to the CEO. In your case, that position should report to an executive director or a utility manager or whatever your type, the head man in charge, right? Not to the chief information officer or your IT guy. It's up to those two to coordinate and balance the needs of security against the needs of productivity and efficiency. Because if either one of those guys or gals make a mistake, too much security, not enough security, too much efficiency and productivity, or not enough, mistakes on either side can be devastating to an organization. And if the CISO reports to the CIO, then that makes that link wrong. The CEO, the manager, the executive director has to make the call if they can't decide amongst themselves what's a good balance. The head guy, the head gal has got to make the call to be more secure or less secure. You've got to do the risk analysis on it. It is a CEO level decision, and the CISO has to report directly to the boss. That's the way it's got to be. And if it's not set up like that, it's wrong, because it's not an IT deal. It's a security deal. Okay. So I don't think I did, but I hope that's really clear to all of you. And we may have some IT people on here. That's fine. But I want to ask for some questions right now, and see if I've made that kind of clear for you. This is the first of 2 parts. So next week, we're going to cover a little bit of the same stuff, but we want to encourage you to invite your IT gal or guy. You know, if you use an independent contractor, you know, you pay by the hour, or all that, or, you know, or something like that, or your on staff IT team. But by all means, invite them to next week's deeper dive, where we go in and talk a little bit more about what we talked about today. And then, you know, if you've got an independent consultant, we actually have a partnership program. We love working with IT, both internal IT and external IT people, because we do need to work together. We have to understand the business productivity needs, the level of risk acceptance, you know, how no one has unlimited budgets for anything. Doesn't matter who you are. So, you know, we've always got to have budgets under consideration. But as all of you know, if you've been on any of the webinars, you know that good security, I mean, Fortune 100 security is affordable for small organizations. And you don't have to spend a fortune on it. And you can get those enterprise grade tools. And the only way to get a lot of those is through a company like IronTech. Generally speaking, your IT team or your outsourced IT gal or guy may not even have access to these tools, and, you know, these enterprise grade tools. And then besides all that, it's just a continuous education on the latest, greatest scams out there. You got to stay on top of it all. These days, if all you're doing is relying on antivirus and being told don't click on emails or don't open attachments from people you don't know, if that's what you're relying on, you're going to get hit. It's not an if, it's a when. Okay. So next week, get your IT people on here. Love to talk to them, answer any questions that they have. Kay says, I didn't realize that they were different before you talked about this. Thanks, Kay. I guess I explained myself pretty good. Kenzie just put the registration link in there for next week. So send that to your IT people, whoever you want to be in there. And the best resource, I see Mary's asking, what is the best resource for finding the latest scams? Wow. You know, that's a really good question. We use many resources. Our security training is a great resource, because the thing about continuous security awareness training is it responds to the latest threats and moves them up in the queue. So the way ours works is every week you get like a 2-minute video and you answer 4 questions to keep track of your security awareness. So when the COVID thing hit, we were immediately sending out videos educating on the latest COVID-19 scams, right? Educating them on the COVID websites that are illegitimate, that may be distributing malware, or harvesting emails, or whatever that is. But I'd say subscribing, of course, all of our clients we have a thing called warnings and watches, kind of like the weather service, where if we see something that's directly relevant to our clients, we'll send out a watch or a warning, depending on what it is, explain what the situation is, educate them a little bit. But there's new scams being developed all the time. And I think that's a big job for a single person to stay up to date on it. I mean, I learn a new scam every time I go to New Orleans, so just about, now we're dealing with however many people in the world there are, 8 billion developing, or not all of them are developing scams, but it's a lot. So I hope that answered your question. I don't really have a good answer for that. Kay says Snopes, haha. No, that one's not a good one, but it's better than nothing. Actually, it's kind of fun to browse Snopes. I haven't done it in years. That actually is not a bad one. Yeah, that's not a bad one. At least you'll get an education on the breadth and the depth of the scam market that's going on out there. So just as a reminder, we can do a free assessment, which is it's kind of like a high-level vulnerability. We find out how many people you got, how many endpoints you got, what's the overall structure of your network. This isn't really a full-on vulnerability assessment where we go, oh, you got these ports open and this bad password policy and all of that. This is just a high level, just to get you an idea of what we're talking about, dollar-wise and effort-wise and all of that stuff. And so there's no obligation. We don't have to hard sell this. Everyone needs it. It's just a matter of when they come to that realization. It's like, some people think they're too small or your data is not valuable. Well, neither one of those are true. We covered that in the Myths Deeper Dive series. You can find a lot of these videos on our YouTube channel, a lot of blog posts on our website. There's good resources there. There's a lot of resources. I think we've got some of the videos up there. But at any rate, if you just want, or even any questions about your network or security, that's fine. Just give us a call. We've also got a 30-day trial of our our continuous security awareness training. And you get enough of it to know if it's right for you. And well, I can tell you it's right for you. Everybody should do it. We use the same one ourselves, and we've only got one person in the company that so far has scored almost 100%. So even we can be fooled. So don't kid yourself. It's a brave new world out there. Here's some more contact stuff, maybe, if I can get to it. sales@irontechsecurity.com. There's my email address, and once again, our phone number. Website's got a lot of resources. Feel free to get there. And I think I answered all of the questions.
Yeah, I think you did.
If anyone else has any, speak up. I'm trying to hit my 30-minute deal. Oh, I went over. Darn it. 1 minute over almost. All righty. Well, we will see you next week. Bring your IT people, and really enjoy bringing these to you guys. Thanks again. Bye.